The Stranger Things finale operates as a deliberate narrative loop connecting its ending back to the earliest origins of the series, both inside the story and in real-life production history. One of the clearest examples is Hopper's reference to Montauk, which is not a plot thread but a conscious callback to the original title and concept of the show when the Duffers first pitched it. This idea of circling back permeates the entire finale from character arcs to visual motifs throughout. The episode the creators embed subtle details. A person in the crowd wears a Duffer Brothers shirt. Matt Duffer appears briefly in a bar. The Season 1 Dungeons & Dragons poster has always contained an early form of the Mind Flayer. Even the placement of letters on book spines subtly forms 11 Duffer Brothers shirt buried in a crowd like a ghost of its own creation. Matt Duffer lurking in the background of a bar scene, and the Season 1 D&D poster quietly hiding the Mind Flayer long before anyone realized what the creature truly was. These details make the world feel haunted by its own beginning, as if the forces that shaped Hawkins had been stalking it since the first roll of the dice. Even the arrangement of books silently forming 11 feels less like a cute Easter egg and more like a reminder that 11's existence has always been written into the fabric of the story, predestined, doomed. The final D&D game, mirroring the very first, carries a somber weight the kids try to reclaim normalcy. But their laughter is shaky and the shadows around them feel heavier now. Much of the finale's mythology is pulled from the stage play, The First Shadow. But the show compresses it so tightly that it becomes suffocating. Henry Creel's childhood infection by the Mind Flayer is revealed not as an accident, but as a horrific predetermination, a parasitic link that doomed him to become Vecna and tied his life to the Upside Downs. Ancient Intelligence, Brenner Ellis, and Project Rainbow emerge as puppets. Believing themselves to be puppet masters, their lives consumed by a cosmic intelligence that manipulated them long before the gates opened. It becomes clear that the Mind Flayer and Vecna are not separate threats but a fused monstrosities, two expressions of a single predatory will. Killing one means killing the other, and that realization casts the finale's violence in a grim, ritualistic light. Character arcs resolve, but with a darker finality than fans might expect. Dustin's act of honoring Eddie by flipping off Principal Higgins reads less like rebellion and more like a desperate attempt to keep Eddie alive in a world that has forgotten him. Will, who has carried a ghost of longing since Season 1, is forced to let go, not because he is healed, but because he has no choice. The world has moved on without him. Max's sudden revival remains unsettling. A body resurrected, but a mind fractured her life, tethered to 11 in a way that feels more like a supernatural debt than a miracle Hopper. And 11 revisit their old promises, but the parallels don't bring comfort, they only highlight how much trauma has chewed through both of them. Even the casual conversation about Philadelphia hints at the infamous Philadelphia experiment, another myth about men erased, displaced, and torn through dimensions, an omen rather than a reference. Layered through the finale is the most disturbing question: did 11 really die? The episode wants the viewer to doubt everything they see. Her body shows no wounds, her heartbeat is heard after the gate seals, and the entire sequence of events is riddled with impossible circumstances. No powers, no way to escape military surveillance, no explanation for her sudden disappearance. The suggestion that Kaylee crafted an illusion to fake 11's death casts a deeper shadow over the narrative. If Kaylee intervened, it means 11 vanished not in triumph, but in fear, running from enemies she could no longer fight, leaving her friends to grieve a death. That never happened. The Iceland epilogue, instead of offering peace, feels cold and isolating a landscape that mirrors the emotional void she inhabits. 18 months later, the government predictably buries the truth, labeling the catastrophe a natural disaster. Hawkins is rebuilt, but its scars run deep, and the survivors walk through their routines like people who have seen the world end and are unwilling to admit that it nearly did again. Mike turns to writing, creating a book titled Stranger Things, a coping mechanism disguised as mythology. It mirrors the tradition of those who write about horrors because speaking them aloud is too dangerous. The end credits showing the characters trapped within a D&D sourcebook, no longer read as playful nostalgia, but as a bleak metaphor. Their lives, their traumas, their victories are forever sealed in a story that the rest of the world treats like a game. The Duffers themselves have said 11 had to leave a statement that feels like a quiet admission that her disappearance is not heroic but necessary. She had become too powerful, too wounded, too hunted to ever return. The finale feels less like a clean ending and more like a haunting, a story that closes the gate but leaves the darkness lingering. whispering that the Upside Down never really lets anyone go, echoing Eleven's identity. The final D&D game, the characters play mirrors the very first campaign of Season 1, creating an emotional symmetry that underscores the show's reflection on its own beginnings. Much of what appears in the finale originates from the stage play Stranger Things, The First Shadow, which the show condenses dramatically, Henry Creel's history with the Mind Flayer, Brenner's experiments, Dr. Ellis' involvement, and the Project Rainbow material all come from the broader canon that many viewers never saw directly. The compressed pacing results in dense mythology, such as the Mind Flayer fragment possessing Henry at a young age, turning him into the first test subject, and establishing that the Mind Flayer and Vecna are inseparably linked, so killing one kills the other. The finale's character narratives also resolve through intentional echoes. Dustin fulfills Eddie's dream of flipping off Principal Higgins' will, finally closes the emotional wound he has carried since Season 1 by releasing his feelings for Mike Max. Revival is connected to her ongoing psychic tie to Eleven Hopper, and Eleven recall the promises they made to each other and invert them, mirroring their Season 2-3 relationship arc. Meanwhile, lines from Nancy, Robin, Jonathan, and Steve mentioning Philadelphia serve as references to the Philadelphia experiment, thematically linking the government cover-ups and dimensional collapse imagery that parallel the Upside Down's origins. Many old references such as the wrinkle in time metaphor and classic superhero parallels reappear, making the finale intentionally feel like a conclusion stitched together from long-running threads, memories, and even the show's earliest inspirations. At the same time, some confusing or inconsistent elements serve more as narrative shorthand than literal world-building. The upside-down water tank, the absence of demogorgons for dramatic convenience, and certain continuity breaks are not meant as deep lore, but as storytelling compromises the creators embraced while merging show and stage play canon. The most debated aspect of the finale is the apparent death of Eleven, which the episode intentionally presents. Ambiguously, multiple details strongly imply she did not die. Her body shows no injuries. Her heartbeat continues audibly after the gate closes. The timeline of events does not support her passing through debris unharmed, and she could not logically have escaped intense military monitoring without the help of another psychic. The finale's clues strongly point to Kali creating an illusion to help Eleven disappear. This explains how Eleven survives without powers, avoids government recapture, and is later seen in the Iceland epilogue, an image the series uses to quietly confirm her survival, while maintaining the emotional weight of her death for the characters within the story. Mike begins piecing this together during graduation when he recalls that Eleven could not have used her powers due to the sonic frequencies in the facility, meaning the miraculous blood-boiling scene was likely staged. His realization aligns with the hidden logic that the audience is meant to connect retroactively. 18 months later, the government publicly attributes the destruction to a massive earthquake executing a familiar cover-up. The characters move on with their lives. Mike becomes a writer and begins a book titled Stranger Things, turning their experiences into mythology in the same meta fashion as the Lord of the Rings characters, writing their own story into a book. The end credits reinforce this by placing the characters inside a D&D sourcebook, suggesting that their memories live on. As legend, the Duffers have repeatedly stated that Eleven had to leave a phrase that intentionally avoids confirming her death, and instead supports the thematic purpose of her departure. The final imagery, including the Iceland scenes and earlier references to 3 waterfalls, symbolically mirrors Mike's own descriptions in his D&D world-building, looping story and imagination together. The entire finale is designed to feel complete while remaining open, a story that returns to its origin points while allowing the characters to continue living in the margins beyond the frame. In this way, the ending embraces the idea that memory, storytelling, games, and imagination all coexist as the medium through which the characters and the audience preserve what happened in Hawkins long after the gates have been closed. The ending of Stranger Things lingers like the aftertaste of a nightmare, one that doesn't fully fade when you open your eyes. It's an ending built not on triumph, but on the heavy recognition that some wounds never quite heal, some doors never fully close, and some people vanish into the spaces between things because the world has taken too much from them. While the government buries the truth and Hawkins rebuilds its shattered streets, the characters we've followed for 8 years are left to navigate the ruins inside themselves. Losses they can't fully articulate, friendships forever altered, memories that whisper like ghosts. And beneath it all lies the final, unspoken question: What truly happened to 11? Did she die a hero? Or did she slip into exile, hidden away in a world that no longer feels safe for her? The answer doesn't bring comfort. It's not meant to. The Iceland epilogue, cold and quiet and impossibly distant, is a reminder that even miracles come at a cost. 11's survival, whether real or illusion, is not a victory, but a sentence, a life lived away from those she loves with the weight of a war she barely won, pressing against her spine. The heroes of Hawkins didn't get a clean ending. They got something closer to what real trauma looks like, a slow, uncertain walk forward, haunted by what they lost and wary of what still might come crawling out of the dark. The story's final meta layer, Mike writing. Stranger Things as a book, the characters framed inside a D&D manual paints them not as survivors, but as legends trapped in their own mythology. Their pain becomes narrative. Their scars become lore. In the end, Hawkins becomes a place remembered through stories. Because remembering it directly is too much to bear. And that's where you come in. Because the truth is, stories like this don't end when the camera cuts to black, they end when we decide they do. They live on in the people who dissect them, question them, reinterpret them, and refuse to let them fade. If the finale left you unsettled, uncertain, or hungry for answers, that's not a flaw. It's the point. The world of Stranger Things was never just monsters and powers. It was fear loss, friendship, and the way darkness shapes us. Now it's your turn to carry it forward. So ask the hard questions. Revisit the scenes that felt off. Pick apart the illusions. Look for the shadows between the frames. Consider what it means for a story to fold back on. Itself for characters to live on as myths, for a girl to vanish into a frozen landscape carrying the weight of every life she ever tried to save. And don't let the quietness of the finale fool you. Its echoes are still out there waiting for someone willing to listen. If the gate has finally closed, then you are the one who must decide what stays locked behind it and what refuses to die. The story is finished, but the conversation isn't. The story and behind the scenes, and it leans into that loop hard. From Hopper name-dropping Montauk, the original working title, to Tiny Blink, and you miss it. Cameos from the Duffers themselves, the whole thing feels like the show winking at its own past. The details are wild. Someone in the crowd rocking a Duffer Brothers shirt. Matt Duffer slipped into a bar scene. The old Season 1 D&D poster secretly hiding a proto-mind flayer, and even book spines on a shelf lining up to make 11 like. The world itself is haunted by how the story began, like Hawkins has been cursed since the first dice hit the table. The final D&D game mirrors the very first one, and the kids are laughing, but there's this heaviness in the air that says nothing is the same anymore. The mythology comes in thick, pulled from the stage play The First Shadow, but squeezed so tightly into the finale that it almost feels too close to breathe. Henry Creel wasn't just unlucky, he was marked infected, tied to the mind flayer before he even knew what he was becoming. Everything Brenner Ellis Project Rainbow thought they controlled was actually controlled by something older, something watching them the whole time. Vecna and the Mind Flayer aren't two villains. They're two faces of the same ancient monster, and taking one down means the other goes with it, which makes every fight in the finale feel like some doomed ritual. The character endings hit with this brutal weight, Dustin flipping off principle. Higgins for Eddie isn't just a joke, it's him trying to keep Eddie alive in a world that forgot him, while finally letting go of Mike isn't healing its survival. It's him accepting that life moved forward without him. Max waking up again is less miracle, more uneasy bond. Her mind cracked. Her life tied to 11 like a psychic debt hopper, and 11 revisiting their old promises only shows how trauma chewed them both up. Even small talk about Philadelphia feels like a warning, a nod to the Philadelphia experiment stories about people disappearing into dimensions that don't let go. Then comes the question the finale wants you to obsess over. Did 11 really die? The details don't add up. No wounds, no real explanation for her escape. From Military Watch, her heartbeat still audible after the gate closes. The whole blood-boiling scene doesn't track without powers unless someone else helped her. And that's where Kaylee slips in the idea that she forged the illusion of 11's death to get her out unseen. If that's the case. 11 didn't die, she ran. She vanished because the world around her had gotten too dangerous, too heavy, too full of people hunting her. The Iceland end scene, ice cold, empty, far from anyone she loves, feels like exile, not peace. A year and a half later, the government slaps an earthquake label on everything, business as usual. Hawkins is rebuilt, but everyone who survived carries that end-of-the-world stare. Mike starts writing a book called Stranger Things, turning their trauma into mythology because saying it out loud is impossible. The end credits trap them inside a D&D sourcebook, which hits less like a fun nod and more like a message. Their lives are stories now, legends, pain sealed in pages. The Duffer said 11 had to leave, which sounds more like she became too powerful, too broken, too hunted to ever come home. The ending doesn't give you closure, it gives you a haunting, a sense that the upside down never truly lets go. The Iceland. Shots the callbacks to the beginning, the looping imagery, all of it says the story ends where it began. But nothing inside the characters will ever be the same. This ending sticks like a nightmare aftertaste. You wake up, but the dread stays because Stranger Things was never just about monsters, it was about fear and loss and the way darkness rewrites you. And now the story is passed to you, because stories like this only end when we decide they do. So revisit the moments that felt wrong. Chase. The clues pull apart. The illusions look for the shadows hiding between each frame. Ask what it means for a girl to slip into a frozen world carrying all the lives she tried to save. Ask what it means when characters become myth because remembering them honestly hurts too much if the gate is shut. Now you choose what memories stay locked behind it and what echoes stubbornly refuse to die. The story is over, but the conversation stays alive. The Stranger Things finale doesn't just end, it loops. It spirals, it circles back to everything we've seen and everything we thought we knew. From Hopper name-dropping Montauk to tiny blink and you miss it cameos from the Duffers themselves, the episode is a love letter to its own beginnings. Every detail is deliberate. Someone in a crowd wears a Duffer Brothers shirt. Matt Duffer sneaks into a bar scene. The Season 1 D&D poster hides an early mind flayer and books on a shelf line up to spell 11. The world feels haunted by its origin like Hawkins has been carrying its secrets since day one. The final D&D game mirrors the very first, and while the kids laugh, there's an undercurrent of unease. The shadows are heavier now, the stakes feel infinite, even in normalcy. The mythology packs a punch. Pulled straight from the stage play The First Shadow, but compressed until it's suffocating. Henry Creel's childhood infection by the Mind Flayer isn't random, it's predestination, a parasitic link that dooms him to become Vecna long before he ever knows it. Brenner Ellis Project Rainbow. All think they control the chaos, but they are puppets of something older, something far bigger. Vecna and the Mind Flayer aren't two separate threats. They are two sides of the same ancient intelligence. Killing one kills the other, and the finale's battles become ritualistic acts of inevitability. Character arcs don't resolve neatly, they twist and ache. Dustin flipping off. Principal Higgins isn't rebellion, it's love and grief stitched together. Will letting go of Mike isn't healing, it's survival, a recognition that life moves forward without you. Max resurrected isn't a miracle, it's a tether. A psychic debt linking her to 11. Hopper and 11 revisiting old promises isn't closure, it's trauma echoing back. Philadelphia references aren't random, they're warnings about vanished people, erased by government experiments by forces beyond understanding. And then the finale asks the question, it leaves hanging. Did 11 really die? Her body shows no wounds. Her heartbeat persists after the gate closes. The timeline doesn't allow her escape. The blood-boiling sequence defies logic unless someone intervened. That's where Kaylee's illusion comes in. The finale hints that 11's death may have been staged, a survival strategy, a vanishing act, not a heroic sacrifice, but a necessary exile. Her disappearance isn't triumphant, it's strategic. She's hiding from a world too dangerous, too full of hunters, too heavy with stakes. The Iceland epilogue reinforces that cold truth. Survival isn't victory, it's exile. The world moves on without 11, and she moves through it alone. The government covers up the catastrophe, labeling it a natural disaster. Hawkins rebuilds, but scars run deep. Survivors carry an invisible weight, and Mike turns to writing a book called Stranger Things as a way to process, as a way to survive, as a way to mythologize the unspeakable. The end credits trap the characters. In a D&D sourcebook, their lives are legend. Their pain is narrative. Their scars are lore. 11 had to leave, not because she died, but because her power trauma and the world chasing her left. No alternative. The ending isn't clean or comforting. It's haunting. It's a recognition that some doors never fully close. Some losses are permanent. Some darkness lingers even when the camera cuts away. The story loops back on itself. The beginning mirrors the end, and yet nothing feels resolved. Because trauma doesn't tie up neatly. It rewrites you, shapes you shadows, you in ways that linger beyond the frame. This is where you come in. The story doesn't truly end when the credits roll. It ends when we, the audience, pick it back up when we dissect it, when we question it, when we refuse to let it fade into memory. Revisit the scenes that felt wrong. Pick apart the illusions. Chase the shadows between the frames. Ask what it means for 11 to vanish. Into ice and fear. Ask what it means for Hawkins to rebuild over trauma. Ask what it means when characters become myth because reality is too heavy to hold, carry forward the tension and the mystery. The world of Stranger Things wasn't just about monsters. It was about fear loss, friendship, the way darkness shapes identity, and the ways stories keep trauma alive. Now it's your turn to keep it alive. Rewatch the first campaign. Rewatch the D&D dice rolling. Rewatch the book spines that spell. 11. Look at every cameo, every background detail, every echo of the Duffers themselves, because each one is a breadcrumb, a reminder that the story never really leaves you. It waits. It whispers. It challenges. And then ask yourself what stays locked, behind the gate, and what refuses to die, because that choice is yours now. Every theory, every interpretation, every argument about what happened to 11, every discussion about Hawkins' scars, every debate about the Upside Down is you keeping the story alive, because the finale is less a full stop and more a question mark. Less an ending and more a challenge. Less about resolution and more about what we do with the story. Once the lights go up. Once 11 vanishes into a frozen exile. Once the government covers its tracks, once Hawkins rebuilds, we are the ones who keep the echoes alive. We are the ones who carry forward the fear, love, grief, triumph, and myth of a town and its kids trapped in extraordinary circumstances.